Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is G. Cole, and welcome to Homegrown, where I get to share with you some good music while talking to some great people. Hello world, I hope you're feeling as good as I am. I want to big up all my homegrown listeners out there and welcome all the new listeners. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do, so we can keep you updated when new material is available. We will be posting new episodes bi-weekly. We're also now available on Spotify. I want to thank everyone who has been listening and sharing. Please leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. We'd really appreciate it. This is episode 17. Now, January is being recognized as Human Trafficking Awareness Month nationally. And on behalf of everyone here at Homegrown with G. Cole, we send our sincere thank yous to all those fighting the good fight and working tirelessly to educate us all on this dangerous problem that's plaguing us today. You have our continued support as well as our prayers for all the victims that are going through this right now.
I'm a Superman, thanks to Lois Lane. Used to weigh my problems when I went insane. Took me from the depths when I lost my name. Ooh, give me something I could live for. Now everyone is wondering what's the change. They don't recognize I have so much to say. And I never thought someone could love someone so much that they'd give up on everything. I know I will be there when you need me. I will be there when you cry, baby. I will be there when you need someone to tell you that you're beautiful, baby. I will be there when you need someone to run with. I will be there when you need someone to dance with. I'm your lover till the skies turn gray, girl. 'Cause you're beautiful, baby. It's you're beautiful, oh you're beautiful. It's you're beautiful, baby. Yes, you're beautiful. It's you're beautiful. It's you're beautiful, baby. Feel butterflies when I'm in your hands. You can turn the pavement into white sand. You can make a moment a memory in a glance. And I can't believe anyone else. Everybody's talking, you're always shining. You never stop listening, baby. And I never thought someone could love someone so much that give up on everything. I know I will be there when you need me. I will be there when you cry, baby. I will be there when you need someone to tell you that you're beautiful, baby. I will be there when you need someone to run away. I will be there when you need someone to dance with.
And that one is Superman by Taurus Riley from the album Contagious. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking, and pretty much slavery of the modern era. A slave is defined as a person who is property of and wholly subject to another, a bondservant, if you will. There are methods implemented by slave owners to break people into servitude. The most used and effective method of breaking someone is physical pain, fear, and so forth. The most effective means, however, is keeping someone in mental pain, mental conditioning. You can't break the unbreakable, you can't mold the unmoldable. And when we talk about our heroes, they're normally either legends that have passed, they're folklore. Well, one of my heroes is a good friend, and she's very real. Ladies and gentlemen, CEO of the Sungate Foundation, Ms. Shamira McKenzie. Shamira, welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me, G. Cole. How are you?
I'm great. Can't complain. Can't complain at all. It is just such a pleasure having you on the program. We're going to dive right in.
Yes.
But before we go any further, and for those who haven't Googled you yet, I'm going to ask you, of course, to tell us your story, how you got involved in everything. But let's backpedal even further. Tell me a little bit about the little girl, Shamir, from Jamaica to the U.S. before someone tried to steal your life. Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I came to the U.S. when I was 6 years old. My parents and family were here, and I came here and I started to run track at the age of 7. And I really liked it. I was identified as an athlete by my gym teacher in second grade.
Wow.
And he recommended that I compete at something called the Colgate Women's Games in New York. And there I was recruited by a track coach to run. And so I started running track when I was 7. And it's a sport that I really excelled in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was determined that track was going to pay for college. But coming here wasn't easy, as it is for many of us.
Right.
For me, coming here, I was teased a lot in school because of my accent. I was too black, they say. I'm
Wow.
a Jamaican booty scratcher. So
Wow.
at first, that transition was really hard for me. I would go home and cry to my mom. Kids are teasing me. And, of course, my mom's response was, they're just jealous. It's because you're smart. But then my 3 boy cousins were like, don't take that. Fight back. So they taught me how to fight. So when I went back to school, I was really fighting everybody. You called me out my name or said something to me, I was fighting you. And the very last fight I got into, the young lady went to the hospital, and her dad came to my house with a gun and told my mom, if his daughter does not come out of the hospital alive, all 7 bullets in that gun belongs to me.
Ooh.
And so my mom was like, you are going back to Jamaica. You are going to go to school there. It's a better education. And at that time, my mom had plans of buying a home, so she was working multiple jobs to get that goal accomplished.
Right.
And so, how it is, Caribbean parents come to the U.S., and they're really trying to do everything that they can to make ends meet. So that's where my mom stood in that process. But my aunt in Jamaica, she was a stay-at-home wife, so she knew my aunt had the ability to, really give me the care and attention I needed at that time while she got things together. And she told me, I'm not sending you back because you're bad.
Right.
I understand that, you're fighting for yourself, but a part of this, too, is, better education and for you to get all the things you need as a young lady. And so I went back to Jamaica. That transition was difficult, too.
I can imagine.
Because I went back, I started school September, and I had to take, back then it was called the Common Entrance, by the January, which, of course, I was lost coming from the school system here. And so, I had to retake it. I skipped grade 5, which I shouldn't have. So when I went back, they put me in grade 6, but I really should have been in grade 5. So I did 2 years of grade 6 and took the Common Entrance again, more prepared, do extra lessons and things like that.
Right.
And the second time I passed, and I went to Westwood.
Trelawney.
Westwood and Trelawney with the straw hat.
I used to love Westwood.
Yes. It's one of the best schools in Jamaica, of course.
It absolutely is. Absolutely. I used to threaten my daughter sometimes and say, I'm going to send her to go Westwood. That's where her mom went. So I was like, you're going to go to Westwood, but, at least her mom used to say it thinking that it would drive some form of fear in. But I don't know. For some reason, I think it might have excited her. I think she was looking forward to it.
Westwood is the school. It teaches you a lot. It really prepares you for life.
True.
So.
True. Cool. Well, I mean, I as I speak to someone, I generally try to find out, the past, the childhood, and so forth. Now you come to the U.S. and right now, phase 2. Let me go ahead and share with us your story as to how everything transpired that you got involved in human trafficking.
So human trafficking is not something I read in a book or watched on television or research even. It was my life for 18 months. And 18 months is what I describe as severe torture in every sense of the word torture. I was severely beaten, raped, sodomized, and I witnessed these very things happen to other young ladies. But when I say torture in every sense of the word, I really want your listeners to understand when we talk about human trafficking, everything that you can think of when you hear torture takes place when we talk about human trafficking. I have witnessed some of those things myself. I've seen other young ladies witness some of those things. And now I work with young ladies who have had some of the most some of the worst experiences ever, that you would not even begin to imagine that one human being could do this to another person.
Wow.
So it is, when we're talking about human trafficking, which is the second largest growing crime in the world, we are talking about an issue that is affecting humanity globally. You know? So for me, as I said, I started running track at a very young age. And when I came back to the U.S. from Westwood, I got into one of the top 4 high schools in New York City at that time, which was Murray Bertram High School. And I ran track for them and did very well. I am what you consider to be a wide-range athlete, which I can run sprint, I can run middle distance, I can run long distance. Whatever you train me for, I will run and I will excel. So I made the state team for the 4x1, the 4x4, the 4x8. I am still ranked in New York City. I'm still ranked number 7 in New York City for the 2000 steeplechase. So whatever and I made the state team for cross country. So whatever you trained me for, I would really excel at. I even, only field events I really didn't do well at, but I even tried the race walk and got a medal for race walking. Well, of course, I got that medal because I was competing. I was teammates with the young lady that was ranked 4th in the nation for race walking. So when we did a race walk together, I medaled on her strength.
Hey,
not
a medal's
mine.
a medal. A medal's a medal. We take it.
I attempted that, and, it was something that I like. Field events weren't my thing. But I was determined that I was not going to pay for college, that track was going to be my way into financing my college education. And I ensured that every time I ran, in my head, there was a college coach that was looking for me.
Right.
And by my senior year, I made captain of my team. And I remember running home every evening just to see what college wrote to me. And there were colleges writing to me from all over the United States.
Wow.
And for me, it was just exciting to come home from track practice and see, what college wrote to me today? I don't even know who you are. But a very traumatic thing happened during my senior year of high school, and that was the bombing of the Twin Towers. And I went to school just a few blocks from that bombing, actually. And I remember walking from Manhattan to the Bronx and just going through that entire day, seeing people covered, seeing the building fall, seeing the building on fire, that type of thing. So after that experience, I decided I didn't want to go to school out of state.
Right.
I wanted to go to school within the tri-state area, so if anything happens, I can be close to home. Right? Because I was raised to be very family-oriented, everything was about family for me. So being away from my family, with such a traumatic event, of course, will be a problem for me, because that day it was just trying to get home to be with my family. That was the focus that day. So when I got to to my senior year in high school, I really was looking at colleges within the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut area. And I had my mind set on one specific college, Southern Connecticut State University. But that coach took a long time to respond to me. After I got a letter, he was out because he travels with his athletes. And so he was out traveling with his athletes, and it was August now, and my mom is like, you have to select a school. Like, we cannot wait on this coach. You have to select a school. And it was a Division III. They weren't giving me a full scholarship. It was whatever financial aid doesn't cover, we'll cover it. But that was fine with me. I visited the school because in high school you get, I forgot what it's called, but you get to visit 5 colleges free of cost. And so I took I took advantage of that. And so when I visit that school, I just love it. I love the coach. I love the way he trained. And I was excited about going there. But I had to choose a school. So I chose St. John's University in New York. And I went to St. John's, and I got a full scholarship, tuition, books, full ride.
Nice.
It was a great package. But all my coaches from high school said to me, because at that time, too, I wanted to be the next Marion Jones.
Right. Marion
Jones was the woman to beat back then, and I was determined I was going to be the next Marion Jones. And when I accepted St. John's offer, all my high school coaches said to me, focus on your education.
Right.
Don't really focus on track.
Right.
And I was like, duh, of course they're going to tell me that. But there was a reason for that, right?
Right.
So I got to St. John's, and in my freshman year, all the upperclassmen said to me, we give you until your junior year. You're either going to quit or you're going to be injured. And I'm saying to them, you guys must not know me. I'm Jamaican. Like, quitting is not in my DNA,
Right.
So I realized that the times I was running in high school, I was not running in college. Right? And in high school, I only trained 4 days a week for 2 hours. In college, you had 6 a.m. Practices, afternoon runs, weight room. I didn't have any weight room. I didn't have any 6 a.m. practices in high school, and I was doing well. And so freshman year of college, sophomore year of college, I was not doing so well. So I decided going into my third year, I was going to train with my high school coach to get me back to the athlete that I know I am. And while training that summer, I pulled my hamstring. And when he sent me to the trainers, they will do all the fancy things for your leg. Ice bath, heat, all of the good stuff. And then I would report to him to tell him what I did with the trainers. And he would say, go run 6,200, go for a long run, do this, do that, which was counterproductive for, the healing of my hamstring.
Right.
And so he still had me competing in meets, and my very last cross-country meet, I remember running, and he saw me in the race, basically limping, and he would just say, go, Mackenzie, go, Mackenzie, go. And after that race, he said to me, I don't like the way you ran today. I don't know if I'm going to renew your scholarship next semester.
Oh, man.
And so I said to him, keep it. I'm going to do what every other college student do. I'm going to take out loans, take out financial aid, and go back to school myself without the scholarship, because clearly I told you I was injured. I'm injured. You still have me competing, which should not be. Right? And so I went to the financial aid office, took out financial aid, took out all these loans, but then I was still $3,000 short. So I decided I would get a little job because we had the month of January off. I decided I would get a job and try to get the money that I needed for school.
Right.
So I got a job and I was working, and I remember going to UPS that day to mail a package. And while I was coming back to the office, I saw a car coming towards me. And the car looked familiar. And you're looking at the car because the windows are tinted, and it looked like one of my friend's cars. So I'm looking to see if that's my friend. But I come to find out it wasn't. But the car stopped. The guy got out. He extended his hand. Hello, young lady. I'm so and so. What is your name? And he had a very nice approach, contrary to what was happening in New York at that time. How guys were approaching back then. So we exchanged numbers, and we had great conversation. We talked about single parents in the community, the high number of African-American males incarcerated, politics, all the social justice issues that I enjoy talking about.
Right.
He said he graduated from Morehouse College. What should have been a red flag for me was when I asked him, well, what do you do for a living? He said, I want you to like me for who I am and not what I do. But at that time, in my naive state of mind, I thought, that I really want him to think that I like him for him and I'm not after his money.
Right.
I don't want him to think I'm a gold digger.
Right.
So after, talking to him for a while, I shared with him now that, I'm working this hard because I am trying to get this money to go back to school. And he said, well, if you're working and paying for your off-campus apartment and you're covering all these bills, you'll never be able to save this $3,000 that you need for school. I have a basement apartment that you can stay rent-free and so that you can save for school. And I thought, wow, this is a very nice guy. We have great conversation. And he's even offering his basement apartment.
Right.
And he got one of his friends to help me move into his basement apartment. Everything was going along fine until he said to me, I have a way you can make some quick money. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, you ever thought about dancing? And he's talking about exotic dancing now.
Right.
And the first thought that came to my mind was, oh my gosh, my mom will kill me. Right? Because, Jamaican parents always tell you, I bring you into this world and I can take you out.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
That is like, I think every Caribbean parent, that was in the parent handbook. Like, you always say this to the kid. Right?
Yeah.
So I thought about it and I said, well, let me give it a try because I really need to get back in school. So the first club he put me in 2 hours, I made $300. Nobody touching me. Didn't have to take off my clothes or anything.
Right.
So I said, 2 hours, $300. In no time, I'll make this money.
Right.
So after that, he took me outside of the club and he put me in this house where he said it was $10 for a wall dance and $20 for a lap dance. And I remember walking around asking everybody, do you want to dance? Do you want to dance? Do you want to dance? And no one wanted to dance with me. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm not that ugly, right?
Right.
But it wasn't that type of party. It was a house on a regular residential block in Brooklyn, but it's what we would consider a whorehouse.
Oh, okay.
And that was unbeknownst to me. So this one guy came up to me and he asked me how much it was for oral sex. Now, being that this party was unbeknownst to me, like what it really is, I started to curse the guy out. Right? And he overheard the conversation and he pulled me to the side. And mind you, he told me, you can dance, but I will help you in terms of this is very dangerous. I will protect you.
Right.
Because there are some bad guys out there, and I'll just make sure that no one bothers you, so I'm protecting you. Not that he was a pimp or anything like that, right?
Right.
So, when he overheard that conversation, he pulled me to the side and he said, you're going to do whatever that guy said do. And I said, did you hear what he asked me? And he said, yes, it's $50. And I said, well, you go do it then.
Ooh.
And so we got into an argument again. And, I told him I would just leave.
Right.
And he said, do you really think you could make it out of here alive? And I remember him putting his hand around my neck and bringing me back to my position. And he said, do you really think you could make it out of here alive? And I immediately thought about the big bodybuilder-looking guys at the front door that we had paid to get in.
Right.
And I knew I couldn't make it past those guys because this was in a 3-story house in Brooklyn.
Right.
And I had to get downstairs. And I was on the 3rd floor at that time. And I had to get downstairs. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to make it past all these guys.
Right.
So I went back to this guy. And, of course, this guy did not want to talk to me because I had just finished cursing him out. He didn't want to hear nothing I had to say. So I remember saying to him, my life is on the line, right? And I don't know exactly what I said to the guy, but I told him when he asked me, what do I mean? I said, let's have some lap dances and I could tell you about it. And I remember just talking to him. I don't know exactly what I said,
Right.
but that's how I got some money out of that guy. So I thought when I got back to the house, it's just going to be me and him. And I'm a fighter. I know how to fight.
Right.
So if
right.
he tries anything, like come after my throat again, I'm going to fight him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got back to the house, I went to him and I said, well, thanks so much for your offer and your willingness to help me. You talked about dancing, and I was okay with that. But you didn't mention anything about prostitution, and that is not my cup of tea. So thank you so much for your offer, but I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to pack my things. And he immediately got up and said, do you really think you could leave me? And I remember going towards the door, and he told me, well, if you leave me, I know where your mother is. I know where your mother lives. I know where your grandmother lives.
Oh.
And I will kill them if you leave.
Right, right.
So at first I thought, he's just saying that, right? And, I went towards the door, and then he came after me, and he came after my neck again, and I punched him in the face. And that's when I learned rule number 1, never hit a pimp, because he had rings on his fingers. He started punching me back in the face with the rings on his fingers. Oh. He had on Timberland boots, and he started stomping me with his Timberland boots and choked me to the point of unconsciousness where I lost control of my bodily functions.
Wow.
Right? To this day, I still have a dark spot in my right eye where he popped a blood vessel from choking me. And I remember waking up, gaining consciousness, and this monster that had done this to me turned into Prince Charming. And he was so apologetic. I lost control. I don't know what happened to me. I'll never do this to you again. Please forgive me. And in that moment, I forgave him.
Wow.
Right, and he talked about, you don't have to get engaged in prostitution. You just have to dance. And you remember you're trying to go back to school. So he was, manipulating me.
Playing the psychological games.
That he wouldn't do this again. And that cycle of abuse continued for 18 months.
Wow.
18 months, and people ask, well, why didn't you just run? That's the number one question I get. I get when I do presentations. Why didn't you just run? But when someone tells you that they will kill you if you leave, and they will kill your family, and you see them, you witness them doing things to others, and you yourself have been beaten to the point where you believe you're going to die within the next second, that's someone that you don't play with.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So over a period of time, you develop this compliant behavior simply to survive.
Absolutely.
So you're not even thinking about the next day. You're thinking about how are you going to survive the next minute, because any little thing that you do can result into a physical abuse.
Right.
If you look a certain way, you can get slapped. If you say certain things, you can get hit. So you are just trying to survive the next minute.
Right.
So imagine someone living in that type of fear where you are afraid of the physical, and then there's that psychological part of it. That person has that much psychological control where if they say jump, you say how high.
Right.
Simply to survive. Or simply out of fear of your family dying.
Yeah. It's not just you on the line at this point.
Right. And that's what many of our young people, we have young girls who are trapped in trafficking because of experiences like this.
Wow.
And anyone can say, if that was me, I would have done this and I would have done that. Well, let me tell you, I've tried it.
Right.
I tried running away. Right? And I remember the first time I ran away, he told me, I'm at your mother's house right now. So if you don't come back, you know what's going to happen. Now, I know this man has guns and things like that.
Right.
The moment he said that, I came back. And when I came back, my punishment was being sodomized.
Right.
So running away wasn't an option for me for a while, for a long time. I thought of poisoning his food, and I said, well, if he doesn't die, I had linked up with these Jamaican gangsters who I know are the real deal, right? And, people can put two and two together. I'm not going to call any names, right? But I know these guys were the real deal. I linked up with them, had another situation there.
Right.
And so after a while, I thought maybe if I stopped making him money, he wouldn't want me anymore. And, my quota at the time, and the quota is the amount a person must make each night, each day, or each location.
Right.
And at that time, I was working at one of the biggest strip clubs on the East Coast. Some say it's the biggest strip club in the United States. And, all the celebrities come there, your actresses, your actors, your ball players, everybody come there, right? And so he set my quota very high. Your high-profile businessmen came there. And so my quota at that time was $3,000.
Wow.
Working out of that club.
Wow.
Now, you say, wow, G. Cole, but let me explain to you when we talk about the sex industry and how there is a demand for sex by men, right? In this club, they have what's called a skybox. And a skybox basically looks down on the main stage, and it's like a private room. When you come there with a couch, a TV, it's like a private little room, right? When you come there, like a nice sized private room, right? And the men that were coming there at that time, right, they would pay $65,000 a year just to rent the skybox.
Wow. Just for the skybox.
Just for the skybox.
Wow.
And when they're renting the skybox, they are only allowed in there for 2 hours per visit.
Wow. 65.
So these are men who have that type of money at their disposal. Right? And so he knew the type of men that were coming. Like, these men, you sit down, you have a conversation with them, they're giving you money. Right. And so he set my quota very high. So I went home from bringing $3,000 to $1,500 to $500 to $0, which is highly impossible.
Right.
This club. And when I was bringing home less and less, he said, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Well, nobody likes me anymore." And he said, "Nobody likes you." So he pulled me out of that club, and he put me on the street of South Beach. And when you're being exploited, you don't get money to say, "Hey, this is for lunch. Buy yourself some food." Food is a reward, basically.
Wow.
If you don't make your quota, you don't eat.
Wow.
Because he will tell you, you didn't make no money today. You can't eat if you don't make no money. And also, let me remind you, like, every single dollar that you make, you have to turn over to him.
Wow. So you get nothing.
Every single dollar.
Wow.
And he will do what, how, I'm not sure if anybody listening has ever been arrested, but when you get arrested and they do a cavity search, right? He will conduct a cavity search just to ensure that you're not stashing. And stashing is keeping money from him. Right? So it was just an ordeal in itself. There's that ordeal of trying to eat, trying to survive, trying to escape an abusive situation, right? There's all these, and the fear of all of that. It is a very traumatic experience.
Wow.
Right?
I can imagine.
So when I stopped making money and he put me on the streets of South Beach, we would make friends with people just to eat.
Right.
And he caught us one day, And he immediately started beating up the other young lady who sat in the front seat. And he turned to the back and he said to me, "What am I going to do with you?" And I said, "Just let me leave." He said, "You want to leave? I'm going to give you $5,000 and you can leave." But I knew that that wasn't true
Right.
because I saw him use that same example on another young lady. And when he was finished with her,
Right.
her body was just bouncing around on the floor like you're sorting dirty clothes.
Oh, man.
So I knew that wasn't true. So he brought me back to the house and he went upstairs and I heard the sound of his gun. You know, when you load the gun, it makes that kind of sound.
Yeah.
And I had a previous encounter with his gun where I told him I didn't want to drive. And he said, "You don't want to drive? Choose death or driving."
Wow.
And at that time, I had given up all hope in life. And I believed if he killed me, he wouldn't kill my family. So I said, "Go ahead, death."
Right.
He said, "You want to die? Open your mouth." So I opened my mouth. And he placed the gun in my mouth and he pulled the trigger.
What?
Now, the gun was unloaded. So,
Right.
you know, he just beat me in my head with the gun.
Right.
So this time when I heard the sound of the gun, something inside of me did not want to die that day.
Right.
So I
right.
ran out the back door, and we were living in a gated community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I ran out the back door, and I was running around in this community, and I remember this guy being in his garage, and he said, "Why do you keep running around here like that?" And even in the moment of running for my life, I told this guy, "I'm running from my boyfriend who's trying to beat me up. Not my abuser or my
Right,
rapist,
right.
you know, because these are the lies that
Right.
you're programmed to tell." He tells you what to say. If
Right.
the police comes, he tells you what to say. If anybody that's trying to help you, he tells you what to say.
Right.
He's your boyfriend, right?
So now it's become
He's your
almost
man.
real.
He's got your pat, right?
Right.
And so, and that's how I got out. That's the guy that helped me get out.
Wow.
And I got out, and I thought everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't remain. I didn't go home right away. I stayed at one of my friend's house,
Mm-hmm.
and I would call him every single day.
The guy?
And that's what, yes, that's
Okay.
what shocks a lot of people. That how come you escaped, but you still call him? Well, I call him to see where his mind was, because he said he would if I left him, he
hurt
would
your
go
family.
after my family.
Right,
So
right.
I called him to see if he was really going to do that. And after a while, he said to me, "Get off the phone with me because you're on the phone with the police." And so I stopped calling after that because he stopped taking my calls and stuff. But
Right.
he never came after my family. There were no signs until when I finally went back home, my house was raided by the FBI.
Oh, wow.
And I was arrested and charged as his co-defendant for something that's called the Mann Act. I was charged, I took a plea to conspiracy to the Mann Act, which
Right.
is driving minors across state lines for illegal purposes. So even though he forced me to drive,
You still.
right, under our current laws, I still had to face the consequences of doing something illegal.
Right, right.
And that is something that I am currently working on to try to fix our laws for, you know, our lawmakers, our policymakers, our judges, our prosecutors, our defense attorneys, to really understand that when you are victimized
Right.
in such a way, you will engage in some illegal activity simply to survive.
Absolutely.
So currently, we have 36 states that have a vacatur law. So these are 36 states that recognize that they made a mistake by
Right.
criminalizing a victim, and so they will wipe that record clean. But on a
Right.
federal level, we currently have nothing on the books to vacate a felony for someone who got a felony where they shouldn't have. But we are working to bring about change on a federal level. Senator Gillibrand out of New York introduced a wonderful bill that I had the pleasure of helping to write called the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act.
Right.
And so we are hoping that that bill will get passed soon, and that would be the remedy for federal convictions that were wrongful for survivors of trafficking.
Wow. And how's progress with that going so far? Does it, are we seeing any light?
We have gained some co-sponsors, but as you can see with the current political climate, there are other things that take priority. Right now. So we're still pushing.
Right.
But, in this political climate, especially with DACA being out there and, things like that, a lot of members of Congress are really trying to, that's their priority at this time. So,
wow.
It really depends on the climate. But I want people to understand that human trafficking is real. That human trafficking happens, and it's not always like you see on TV. Because for some people, the first time they hear of trafficking or they can identify with human trafficking is through the movie Taken, right?
You know what?
But,
you are so right.
Yes, it's through that movie Taken. But how many of our young people have a CIA father to say, "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'm coming for you"?
No, you're absolutely so right. The funny thing is, when you say that, I've had a conversation with, you know what? Before I even go down that road, stick a pin right there. I'm gonna come back and talk to you some more. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It is Homegrown.
I said these are some serious times. All I can see around us is just violence and crime. Full time for us to centralize, socialize, and realize. To let the sun shine throughout every day. Let the moon shine through the peaceful nights. This is 7-time rise and 7-time fall. But I don't really believe in the falling things at all. Cause life continues as it goes. If you really want to know the truth of the truth isn't being told. No. So I said, these are some serious times. All I can see around us is just violence and crime. Full time for us to centralize, socialize, and realize. So let the sun shine throughout every day. Let the moon shine through the peaceful night. This is 7-time rise and 7-time fall. But I don't really believe in the falling things at all. Cause life continues as it goes. If you really want to know the truth of the truth isn't being told. No. So sometimes you think it's peace and safety. It could be a for sudden destruction. Said you wake up this morning, you better give thanks. You don't know if you're gonna live to see tomorrow.
Yeah, man, and that one is Egyptian with a song called Serious Times, and it's from the album My Name is Egyptian. If you don't have that one, make sure you go ahead and check that one out. Shamir, it's amazing what you said just now, because in this day and age, when we think human trafficking, when we think slavery or so forth of the modern era, when we think anything along those lines, we visualize the panel van coming to a screeching halt and two guys jumping out and grabbing somebody and kidnapping them. But truth be told, that's very rarely the case. And for the most part, it's a more finessed approach. Like you mentioned, winning someone's trust, then taking advantage of that trust.
Right. Most trafficking victims are trafficked by someone they know, because a trafficker will spend time to get to build that trust. Right? And they prey upon your vulnerability. So my vulnerability was school, if you want to call that a vulnerability, because I don't see it as a vulnerability, but for him, that was his way of trapping me, because I had that desire to complete my education.
Right.
But for other young ladies, and especially where we're living in a culture where we have issues such as homelessness, hunger, classism, sexism, gender inequality, those are the things that create this, that fosters the environment for human trafficking, so to speak.
Right, right.
So when you have someone that don't have a place to stay, and we have young people who are in foster care or individuals who are from loving parents,
Yes.
like they're from a loving family, but there is still that vulnerability there. And we can all remember, and for some of us, we still have vulnerabilities even as adults.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so it takes that person to come and assess who you are and find out what those vulnerabilities are and prey upon those things.
Right, right, right. Well, here's the other thing. And I know it's difficult and maybe even unhealthy to walk around on high alert all the time. But what if any are signs that one can pay attention to that might help save someone else from something similar?
Well, I always encourage parents, number one, to be nosy.
Right.
Right? We are living in a day and age where technology is a thing. Right? And with technology comes problems. Right?
Yep.
Because traffickers are also using technology to recruit and exploit. So we have all our young people who are on Facebook and social media platforms. And, you know, G. Cole, if I should ask you how many social media platforms you think there are, you're going to tell me the common ones, right?
Yeah.
Facebook to young people is outdated.
Wow.
Let me just tell you that, right?
Right.
They have over 2,000 different social media websites out there.
Wow. I could probably name 4 or
Right?
5.
Right. And I
Wow.
trained with a law enforcement officer who he poses that question. And he said, well, tell me the social media sites. And, you know, people give the basic ones that they know, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter.
Right.
And he's like, come on, give me more. And people are like, well, that's all that's out there. And when he starts putting up the pictures of the screen, it went from being completely white to there's no white space left.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So there are ones out there that we're not even aware of,
Oh, man.
which our young people know. So I always encourage parents to be nosy. Find out what that app is about on their child's phone. Find out what they're doing on social media. Talk to your kids about internet safety, right?
Yeah.
Some of the signs to look out for is a change in behavior, right? So if you have an individual or if you know an individual that used to behave a certain way and all of a sudden, you know, that behavior change, and especially for our younger young ladies.
Right.
So she's 16 years old and you know how you raised your 16 years old, right? And so all of a sudden she have this over-sexualized behavior.
Right.
You have to wonder, where is that coming from?
Right.
She's getting gifts that you didn't buy her, and these are gifts that she definitely can't afford.
Right.
So these are your name brand purses or shoes that you know, where would you get this item from?
Yeah.
Because I know that no one in the family gave it to you. So where are you getting this from? And don't tell me it's from your friend at school, because who's your friend at school that could give you a Louis Vuitton bag?
Right. True.
Right? So unexplained absences from the home or runaway. Right? So it's not just unexplained absences from the home, but unexplained absences from school.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
where are you going when you should be at school? Right? And then, you know, we live in a society where we tend to blame young people right now. Oh, the kids are too bad. They're this and they're that and they're that. Versus sitting down and spending time with them and talking to them about some of the issues that they're facing. Because us as older people, we didn't have the technological problem to deal with.
True.
Right?
And I think we ignore that sometimes.
Right. And so our young people right now, they have all this additional stuff to deal with, which is, I don't want to say overpopulating their brain, but these are some things that our young people, some of them are really not ready for.
Right.
The exposure to social media and the harms thereof. right? So talking to our children about that, unexplained absences from the home, sometimes there are problems going on in the home that the child is not disclosing.
Right.
So dad is abusing them. The uncle is abusing them.
Right. Right.
And they're telling them, if you should tell your mom, we're going to have problems.
Right.
So oftentimes we see our young people running away from home, not understanding that they're running away from something that they're not disclosing. And sometimes it's not that there's an issue at home, but they're running to something.
Yeah.
So something on the outside is more attractive than what mom and dad can provide.
Wow.
You know, the presence of an older boyfriend.
Right.
We're from a Caribbean culture where you're 16, no, you shouldn't have no boyfriend. Pick up your book.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the reality. With the current culture, the current time that we're living in, if you find out your child is 16 and already have a boyfriend, you telling the child you cannot have a boyfriend, it's not going to stop the child.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is that they're going to sneak behind your back and have this boyfriend.
Yes. Yes. You
So-
know nothing about what's going on.
Right? So what I advise parents to do, oh, you have a boyfriend? Let me meet this guy.
Right.
Of course, you're still opposed to the idea of your 16-year-old having a boyfriend, but you're meeting this guy.
Right.
This guy comes to your house, and he is 40 years old. What does a 40-year-old want with a 16-year-old?
A cutlass.
Right? Or let's say the guy's a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
And we can remember, and even now, sometimes we miss the signs of a bad relationship from earlier on out.
Right.
But we have friends and our loved ones will say, see, I saw that. But sometimes we are so blind by love,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Too close to the
that
fire.
we don't see the reality of who this individual is. So I always advise parents, listen, tell your individual, your child, to bring this individual home.
Right.
And you could see the signs. Well, what do you do for a living, sir?
Yeah.
And sometimes they will make up stories, but you will be able to put two and
can
two
sniff 'em
together
out.
after a while,
Yeah.
right? And be active in that relationship. So what are you guys doing? Where are you guys going? Oh, let me cook dinner for you guys this evening. Let's have a family dinner.
Right.
And you get to know more about this guy because you're not going to know a lot about him in the first visit,
Right. True.
but you spend time with this individual to find out, does
True.
this individual have your child's best interest at heart? And those are things that you can immediately find out. This guy's a loser. Like,
Right. Right. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. And another thing that I've encountered too, and I figured I'd ask pretty much is from research I've been doing, it seems like, you know, the mindset and the perception right now is that there's a bunch of men that controls and there are men that's involved in this heinous criminal ring that's growing and growing and growing. But from my understanding, there are actually some women that are
Oh, yes.
highly and heavily involved.
yes. So it's not just males, they are females.
Mm-hmm.
And they have females that the pimp will send out to recruit on his behalf,
Right.
right? And, you know, because a female will be more trusting of another female.
True.
But
True.
there are female pimps out there as well.
Wow.
But it's just really teaching. You know what, one of the things I believe is the problem, Chico.
Mm-hmm.
Remember back in the day, there was that stranger danger
Yes.
type
Yeah.
of ad. Everywhere you see going around, don't talk to strangers or say no to drugs. Those type of campaigns were prevalent.
Yes.
And those campaigns went away.
Well, I guess it's tough to have stranger danger when social media and the internet has bridged that gap.
Right? And so back in the days, I remember growing up, and if you look at me at a stranger and be like, want to give me candy? I'd be like, no. Stranger danger. Right?
Just the sound of it sounds a little stranger
Right?
danger.
Because it was ingrained, right?
Right.
Ingrained in our heads, like,
Right.
say no to strangers.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
So anything that was funny, right? And for Caribbean parents, right? And I love talking to my Caribbean people because some of the times the way that we raise our children is what really fosters that environment for them to end up being trafficked.
Wow.
So we raise our children like we drive the fear of Jesus in these children.
Right. They can't talk to us.
So when they have a situation where they are stuck and they don't know how to handle it, there's that fear in their head that will say, I'm not going to tell this to Mom because she's going to kill me.
She's going to kill me, yeah. Yeah.
Because I remember being sexually abused at the age of 6. And I did not tell my mom this until I was 30.
Wow.
And I remember when my aunt found out, she cursed me out and saying I was a little whore. Why am I doing this? And I'm just like, now I'm looking back and I'm like, I'm 6 years old.
Right. Right.
This is an older individual that is clearly taking advantage of me, that you still allowed to come to your house, even though you found out, you are now aware of this situation, you still allowed him to come to the house.
And blame the 6-year-old.
And then blamed me.
Wow.
That it was my fault.
Wow.
Right? And psychology tells us that the human brain doesn't fully develop until you're around 24, 25. So even at the age of 21, that I was when I got trafficked, I was still naive.
Right.
And if we understand human development and just how we respond to certain things at certain ages, yes, our young people are going to believe, well, I know everything at 18. At 21, I'm grown. No, you're not. And insurance companies get this a long time ago. This is why, insurance rates are so high if you're under the age of 25.
Right.
They know that you will not always make a rational decision when you get behind the wheel.
Right. True. Never thought of it that way.
And so they profit off of that. But humanity tends to forget about human development. Wow. Another part of it is mental health. Some of our communities do not believe in mental health. They just believe that if you are crazy, you go speak to a therapist.
Mental health, wow.
The child just needs a beating.
Yeah, that's a culture thing.
Right?
That's definitely a cultural issue. I mean, funny enough, you mentioned that the very first episode of the podcast was on mental health in the community, and I was just blown away by how little our community, even in this day and age, is willing to embrace the effects of mental health in the community.
Right, because I remember growing up, there was no going to a therapist.
Nah.
In Jamaica, do you know of any therapists while you were growing up?
Nope. As a matter of fact, I never heard of therapy.
Right? Everything they believe that, I could just beat it out of the child, and beating is not always the answer.
Or pray it away.
Or pray it away, too. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember doing a presentation in Jamaica last year, and I started out by, that video of that mom that had posted beating her kid and putting it on social media, thinking that's going to really fix the problem.
Right.
Which you're really putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Yeah.
Because there are other underlying issues that aren't being addressed.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about this problem of human trafficking, man, it is huge. And therapy is what actually helped me to process all that I went through, where I'm even able to speak to you about my experience now, my trauma right now.
Wow.
Because if you were to ask me about this a couple years ago, I couldn't talk about it without breaking down.
Wow.
I wouldn't have been able to explain it in such a way for people to really understand.
Well,
and that's what I'm facing now, because now I have the ability. I wrote a shelter program for adult survivors of trafficking, and I'm really running that shelter, working with adults, so 18 and over. And actually, I have a referral waiting on me when I get off this phone call.
Wow.
For adult victims. And when I say adult victims, G. Cole, the youngest I've had in my program is 18, and the oldest I've had in my program is 43.
No. Wow. Wow. What I want to talk to you about next is today, tomorrow, growth, the evolution of Shamir. Keep it moving, keep it grooving. It's Homegrown.
Every day I rise on a prayer. That's all I got to take me through. I know one day I must and I will free myself from everything that holds me captive. Gonna be free like a bird in the sky. Gonna be free, gonna fly so high. Gonna be free, gonna free my mind. Gonna be free, gonna fly so high. Life is so sweet and I don't wanna die, but this burden I bear could be hard sometimes. Food scarce, so me juggle everywhere. Sometimes we make a move, me can't find no bus fare. Go look for Mama Jai, she said nothing not dead there. Pan the youth them face, I see the pain. When the war I go on to get the most money. When I say we're hungry, it's time to cry.
And that one is Etana. The song is Free from the album Free Expressions. If you don't have that one, again, that's something that you definitely need to go ahead and check out. Shamir, when it comes to today, what amazes me, and I'm asking about this, is this. I've known you for a couple of years now. One thing I'll say, while your will is obviously strong, hence you being here to give your testimony and help so many others out today, you've got one of the brightest smiles and the most infectious personalities I've come around. An overall sweetheart. How does one endure what you've endured and then be who you are today?
Well, Chico, I'm telling you two things. Number one, Jesus Christ. And number two, therapy.
Right.
My faith has really allowed me to look at myself through God's eyes.
Right.
And really know that I'm destined for greatness. This is not the reason God created me, and that I can really overcome what happened to me. And therapy has also helped me with that, because one of the things that a lot of us struggle with is identity.
Right.
And then we live in a culture where we have so many sources of influence when we talk about identity and what we should look like, how we should wear our hair, how we should dress, what's acceptable and what is not in terms of body figures and images, right?
Right.
And when I went through therapy really helped me to find the core of who Shamir McKenzie is.
Wow. That's powerful.
And that's one thing that has definitely helped me, because when you know who you are, right, there is just this thing that shines out because you know exactly who you are. I don't have to pretend to be Beyonce. I don't have a big butt, and I'm comfortable with the size of my butt, despite what I see on television or what society or the media says is acceptable.
Right.
And so I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm comfortable with the way God made me. I have a big lip and a broad nose, and I'm dark skinned, and my hair isn't long, but I'm comfortable with that.
Right.
Because I know who I am, that there's more to me than just that. Where's my heart?
Wow.
Right? Where's my passion?
Wow.
Things like that. Right? And that's one of the things I work with young people now, to really let them know that, listen, all this hype through, pop culture of this is the image that you need to have, is that your true identity?
Wow.
Because people will hear me present at a conference and they see the very serious Shamir.
Right.
And then when they hang out with me, like they do dinner afterwards and realize I'm really a clown, they're like, wait a second, who is this? And I'm like, this is who I am. I enjoy being silly.
Right.
I love to laugh. I believe that there are so many things in life that we can complain about.
Yes.
If we look at just the current state of affairs in the United States, if you
Yes.
follow those affairs alone, you're going to be miserable every minute of the day.
To say the least.
But you have to find something positive. You have to find something where you can say, you know what? Yes, this is happening. Yes, I feel this type of way. But how do I do something? What are the ways that I'm not going to allow this thing to consume me?
Well, let me ask you this though. As human beings, we will all go through pain of some sort. But the worst pain, I think, is to know someone you love's in pain and you cannot help. How did this situation affect your family then and your family relationship now?
Well, I think it definitely brought me closer to my mom.
Right.
At that time, I was very fearful of my mom. Mm-hmm. My mom spanked me for everything. Okay? And so
Big up yourself, mommy.
There are certain conversations I would not have with my mom.
Right.
To this day, even though we're closer, there's certain aspects of my relationship, my intimate relationship, that I would not share with my mom. While my sister can sit there and talk to my mom about sex and me, no, I can't do that. I will tell her, this is the guy I'm dating, this is the plans, blah, blah, blah. That's it.
Right.
But to get into the details of it, there is still that distance in the relationship in that category.
Right.
Gotcha. Right? Where in other areas, it brought us closer to show that I remember running track when I was younger, and my mom was my biggest support.
Right.
I remember the starter for a race, when before he shoots off the gun, we'll have to tell my mom to be quiet because she was screaming. The minute she heard "on your marks," she was screaming.
Right.
Go, Shamir, go! And the race didn't even go off yet.
Right.
And to this day, she is still my number one supporter.
Wow.
To this day. And it even brought me closer because a lot of young people that I work with, they do not have the liberty to go back home to their parents because their parents do not understand.
Right.
And it was my mom who was in prior me in saying, pray for my daughter because I don't know what's going on, but I believe that God will bring her out of it. And I remember when I first called her, when I was escaping, and when I called the woman, she said, hold on, I got to call your godmother. And when she called my godmother, you would think any normal parent would say, yeah, you're coming home. The first thing they did on the phone was pray.
Wow.
They said, okay, let us pray. And I remember because at that time, I was cursing God. If you are this God, how could you allow this to happen to me?
Right.
Right?
And
so I remember being on the phone like, who are they praying to? Because he doesn't exist. And I even remember when they said amen, I'm like, okay. And they're like, you're not going to say amen? Nope. For what?
Right.
So my mom's faith in this had an impact on me because in such a negative situation, you can imagine she's an only parent and I'm a biological only child, right? And so you can imagine what she was going through. Right? But through it all, she still kept her faith, and she believed that I would come home.
And belief did work out. Belief brought you home.
Right? And so that taught me something about life, that you should always believe, no matter how hard the situation is, take it to God and believe in whatever you're doing.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there are several lessons that came out of that, just by how my mom handled the situation. When I came home, there wasn't any blame placed on me. It was just like the prodigal son.
Right.
It came home, it was just like, yes, you're home. Like, how can I help you? I remember for legal fees, she went right into her pocket and paid for my legal fees and, was making a phone call here, a phone call here. Actually, before I came home, she had an attorney ready.
Wow, Mom.
So when I came home, she said, I already spoke to, when you're buying a house, you have a lawyer and things like that. She already spoke to her lawyer that she had when she was purchasing a home to find a criminal lawyer who says, oh, I know the best in the city.
Wow. Wow, Mom. Wow.
And I even remember when I was, in the courts and I was going through this, there was another federal lawyer who he's been on all the police brutality cases out of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see those officers have not been to jail.
Right.
And that attorney does not know what it means to lose. His game is just that tight.
Right.
So when I hear any police brutality cases out of New York, I look at them, who is the defense? Okay, that cop is not going down.
Right.
Right. And I remember when we got that attorney, just for my little case, it was $20,000. And my mother said, okay, I'll take out a lien on the house. I'll go into my 401k. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that.
Right.
And to this day, she said, see, if I had done that, you wouldn't have discharge.
Amen.
So it's support like that I get from my mom, which, a lot of survivors don't have that love and support.
They don't. And I think sometimes that's the make or break.
Right.
I'm left speechless a lot of times. I'm just sitting here listening. So, forgive me for that. Question for you also, on the other side of it in terms of personal, it is trusting. It is trusting that led you into that situation. So when it comes to relationships right now, romantic relationships right now, how does everything of the past affect your ability to trust today?
I still have problems trusting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a relationship and I really have to explain to my significant other why I have these trust problems. And he is a phenomenal guy.
Right.
Like, I call him my answered prayer from God.
Wow.
Like, I tell him all the time, I didn't know God still made men like you.
Wow.
Because this man goes over and beyond to show me that I can trust him, that I am more to him than my body.
Right.
Right? And just the simple things that he does to show me how much he values me and appreciates me and how worthy I am. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, you're a man.
Right.
Right? And so most of our arguments stems from me not being able to trust him the way I ought to trust him. And he has given me, women say, well, you gave her reason because you didn't do this and you didn't. He has given me 0.0000 reasons not to trust him.
Right.
There's nothing out there. And like I talked to my best friend because he will call her up, like, help me understand what is going on here. I have done nothing.
Right.
But she will do this and she will do that. And that, that's something that I'm still working on because there are still those trust issues because from I was 6 years old,
right.
I have been violated by men.
Yeah. It's way deeper. It's internal and it's
right.
But it takes patience, and apparently he has that.
Right. It really takes patience and a special type of guy to understand that, okay, this woman have been wounded for so long that she cannot even understand that there's a man out there that will not hurt you.
Right. Wow, I think that's powerful, and blessings and big ups to him because it also takes, it takes a special person to be on the other end of that and know that, you know what, there's some healing going on there through it all. Mm-hmm. There's some healing going on. Stick and stay, don't go anywhere because I want to talk with you also about now some educational stuff that you're putting out there and so forth. So bear with me a sec, keep it moving, keep it grooving. It is Homegrown.
Hey, when you have this shit, we smile at the storm, yeah, man. Life hard on this road, it might be rugged, but God would never send you there from you not ready, no. Listen to his voice and hold on steady. We're moving on and on. After a storm there must be a calm. You should have never go resign. Remember, stage your love already there before you born. His love is so pure and divine. Oh yeah. After a storm there must be a calm. You should have never go resign. Remember, stage your love already there before you born. His love is so pure and divine. Just keep that smile upon your face, make it an easy day. Never let them get you down, cause you will make it anywhere. With your love in your heart, make sure you never go astray. And while this sunshine, you got to make it. Judge add the water to my root, the younger truth. Me not go stop work and try until me reap the fruit. And as long as there's no justice, man, a figure revolute. Yeah, just tell the children the truth, yeah. After a storm there must be a calm. You shoulda never go resign. Remember, say your love already there before you born. His love is so pure and divine. Oh yeah. After a storm there must be a calm. You shoulda never go resign. Remember, say your love already there before you born. His love is so pure and divine.
Yeah, man, and that one is Jinx, man, a song called After the Storm, and it's from the album Confessions, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful record. Shamir, there's been, that I've seen so far, a couple of circumstances where recently the education that you're putting out there, the conversations that you've started, the light that you've shone on this growing problem has been paying off. And we see also people getting training and identifying, or at least being aware of certain behaviors that's indicative of human trafficking or slavery, especially when it comes to adults traveling with children on airlines and such like that. Can you speak on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so I have the privilege to work with an organization called Airline Ambassadors, which they started out basically to help travel expenses and open up orphanages around the world for children who have been, in harsh situations. But while they were doing that work, they recognized that there was trafficking taking place on airlines. So they started going around the world and training airline personnel on how to identify and respond to human trafficking.
Wow.
And that's actually the organization I was with in Jamaica when we trained the airports and the seaports in Jamaica last June.
Oh, wow. Nice. And what's that organization called again?
Airline Ambassadors.
Airline Ambassadors, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go look that up. That's awesome works. That's awesome works right there. Talk to me about the Polaris Project. I know there were some organizations that were there for you when you needed them. Not sure if that was an influence and so forth, or that helped you now being so readily available for so many others. But talk to me about the Polaris Project.
Oh, Polaris Project. So Polaris Project was the name of the organization that provided me with residential support, direct services, so to speak. So when I came out of trafficking, when this whole case was going on, they're the one that provided me with direct support. And so they're the ones that helped me with the therapy and case management and things like that. But then when I got in the field, I was working with Shared Hope International, and Shared Hope really helped me to find out more about my case in itself, to understand why I shouldn't be charged in the first place. Because I remember one of my very first assignments from my boss at the time was look up all the charges that my trafficker got and what are the charges that he didn't get for crimes that he commit. And then look at the charge that I got and come up with an argument as to why, using the law, as to why I shouldn't have this crime. And so that's how come I'm able to, dissect my trafficking experience and the legalities thereof. When people say, well, you have a felony. Well, if you have a felony, clearly you were in some wrongdoing, and I'm quickly able to dissect that.
Right.
Dissect that in such a way where I've had a professor from a law school says, you need to enroll in law school now because I need you in my class.
Wow.
After hearing me dissect, why I shouldn't have this charge. So I was able to work with Shared Hope and really work on policy there, policy around, because they have what's called the Protected Innocence Challenge, where they analyze the state laws as it relates to children and provide recommendations as to how states can improve their laws. So I was working on that project. Through them, I started training law enforcement, judges, prosecutors, community members on how to identify and respond, and that carried on. But I'm no longer with Shared Hope.
Right.
I am now with the Salvation Army of Central Maryland,
Nice.
and there I was able to write an emergency residential program for survivors of human trafficking, and that has been my baby for the last 2 years. And it's just the little ins and out that goes into getting a shelter started. And it's technically a shelter, right?
Right.
But when you come to my facility, number one, you do not feel like you're in a shelter. I've had girls come, law enforcement have taken them and said, we're taking you to the shelter. And they get there and they said, you lied to me. This is not a shelter. Right?
Wow.
Because, and people can go on YouTube and just put in Catherine's Cottage and see our facility, and just being able to work with interior designers on beautifying that home. And these are the interior designers who have been on HGTV, NBC, Remaking of a House, award-winning designers that volunteer their time, right, in designing this space. So that in itself has been a blessing to me, to just be able to give back in that capacity, where I now can write a home and know exactly what survivors need.
Yes.
And understand the behaviors, because here's the thing. When trauma impacts the brain, our behaviors are altered. Our way of thinking is altered, right? And that's what our community does not understand.
Yes. Yes.
Right? That when someone has been impacted by trauma, they do things a little different from those of us who haven't been. And so, like, when I talk to my friends and, they will see or read a story, I will say to them, well, you are processing that with a healthy brain. This individual has an unhealthy brain, and that's how they are processing that. Or even my staff.
Right.
When I have young ladies that will come in and they will start yelling and cussing and cursing out my staff. And I have to tell my staff, listen, you have to love on these individuals when they start going off like that.
Yes.
And it's very hard. I'm telling you, it's one of the hardest things to do, Chico.
I can
Having someone
only
yelling
imagine.
and cursing you out, and you're like, sweetie, come here, come give me a hug. And they don't want to give you a hug.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to sit there and listen. I tell my staff that. When they are going off and they're venting, just sit there and listen. Yeah. Because the fact that they could vent to you says a lot. Understanding trauma and what that looks like for the brain. So that has been a blessing, working with survivors, adult survivors, really. And the beauty of that, G. Cole, is having the firsthand experience. So I know for myself that you can move forward, and then having the young ladies come into my program believing in themselves again.
Wow.
And we have this thing written over a doorway in the program. As soon as you come into the house, it's written, and it says, you are destined for greatness. And I have young ladies that have come into my program that did not believe in themselves. They look at me and says, I've been in foster care all my life and no one ever cared. Why do you care?
Wow.
So when they graduate from my program, I had this young lady sent me a text message because she went to another program and she called me Mama Mayor. Some of my residents call me Mama Mayor. She said, you have taught me 3 things. To believe in myself, that I could take on anything into this world, and that I am destined for greatness. And, when she first said the 3 things, I first said to myself, when did I teach her these things? But, throughout that conversation, when that person have a meltdown, the things that you are saying, they are listening. Even though you're probably not getting the response that you would like, I hear you, I'll do better, but they are listening. So for that young lady to say, I was like, okay, she was listening.
She was.
She was listening.
She was.
Right? So it's all about planting that seed for me, planting the seed in these individuals, and I may never see the seed grow. Wow. But what I do know is that I planted a seed. And that's what I tell my staff, like, we are planting a seed. We are planting a seed, amazing. And we may never see that. Because my case manager follows me on Facebook, and she is as astonished by the work that I'm doing now.
I can't imagine.
And for me to even be promoting therapy, because I went to 6 therapists before I found the right one. And I was anti-therapist. Therapy is for crazy people, and I'm not crazy.
Wow.
So for her to even see me promoting therapy, she's like, who is this girl? You know, I had the privilege to meet my arresting FBI agent the other day. He came to one of my presentations, and he himself is shocked. He's like, this is not the same girl I arrested.
Wow.
I've had the privilege of sitting on a task force with one of my former prosecutors, and he didn't identify me. I went up to him and I said, hey, do you remember me? And he said, no. I'm like, Shamir McKenzie? He's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. How are you doing? Are you in school? I'm like, school? You thought I would go to school. You gave me a charge. Right? Wow. And he's like, well, what are you doing with your life? And I said, well, those lemons that you gave me, I'm making grape juice.
Wow. What was his response to that?
Because he gave me lemons and expected me to make lemonade.
Right?
Right? But I made grape juice out of the lemon. Right? And so that is just, you know, what I enjoy most about my work, being able to transform lives. And when I say transform lives, G-Cole, I'm not just talking about the young ladies that I serve. I am talking about law enforcement officers who have been doing this work for 25 years and doing this work one way, looking at victims one way, to coming out of my presentation in tears.
Wow.
Saying, Shamir, I have never looked at this like that. To going on military bases where the commander of the base decided to give me his coin. I forgot what they call the coin, but it's a coin that you get from after putting your life on the line so many times. You get this. It's a hard coin to achieve. To having the commander give me that coin to say, I now look at this issue a whole different way. To having that commander send me a letter like there was, I forgot the name, Pimp Juice. I'm not sure if you're familiar, if you ever saw that in a store called Pimp Juice. I was talking about, called Pimp Juice. And, you know, I was just talking about how we glamorize the pimp culture.
Yeah.
Right? And he sent me a letter afterwards to say, Shamir, I've now taken Pimp Juice off my base.
Wow. That's amazing.
To be affecting lives like that, where you're hearing and you're seeing things, and I'm able to travel the world and share with individuals, meet different survivors from different countries. Like, for example, when I first went to Aruba, you know, I'm from America. Aruba is, when they say it's one happy island, they have a very low crime rate in Aruba.
True.
If there's a murder, it's a big deal.
I love Aruba.
So I came down there and I was talking about human trafficking and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, all the reporters wanted to get a hold of my story. And I remember sitting down for hours with this reporter who was just like, he was asking questions after questions after questions because he was just trying to wrap his mind around human trafficking. Like, I had to tell him, all right, we've had enough.
Right.
And he went home to his wife, G-Cole, and he said to his wife, you know, there's this girl here from America who's talking about this human trafficking thing, and he tried to explain it to his wife. And he called me, the chief of police is the one who had invited me to Aruba. He called her the next day and said, my wife wants to meet Shamir. So I'm thinking, you know, she wants to meet me after hearing my story, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I meet this young lady, and this young lady tells me that this is her story, and she has been struggling in her marriage with her husband because she doesn't know how to tell her husband after 8 years.
And he didn't know.
And he did not know. And she's like, well, how do I tell him?
Wow.
I have trained in Jamaica, and the DSP from Jamaica rescued a young lady from Haiti that was being trafficked into Jamaica. And when I shared in Jamaica, the Gleaner covered my story, and he shared my story with this young lady. And when I still have the WhatsApp message, And he's like, when he first recovered this young lady was on the verge of suicide because she believed her life was over.
Right.
And when he shared my story with her, he said she hangs it up now in her room and said, if she can do it, I can do it too.
Amazing.
So this is something that I'm not going to shut up about.
Oh, you shouldn't.
I believe it is the calling I have on my life for this type of thing because it's really transforming lives. The very first talk I gave, I remember this guy, he looked like a heavy metal type of guy because he had on the long coat, the boots, and he was just pacing in the back of the room.
Right.
And I was like, okay, the pimp sends someone to kill me, but if this is how I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out this way.
Right.
And I ended that talk and I said, this is my story. We all have a story, and what are you doing about it? Right?
Right.
And that guy came up to me afterwards, G. Cole, and he charged at me and he said, you are right. I've been bullied all my life, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Oh, God.
I've been bullied in school, on the job, and I'm not going to. And that was really my motivation to continue to share.
Wow. You just never know who you're affecting.
Because I'm thinking, I'm going to give this talk, and this was my very first talk at Franklin and Marshall University in Pennsylvania. And I'm thinking, I'm going to fire people up to make a difference about human trafficking. Wow. And that wasn't the response. Well, of course, people were fired up about that, but the response that drove me to want to dig deeper into this work was by the guy who said, I've been bullied all my life, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. They say hurt people, but the truth is healed people can heal people. So, I'm just grateful for the work you're out there doing. And talk to us a little bit also about your organization, Sungate Foundation.
That's my baby also. Sungate, when we talk about human trafficking, a lot of people, when they hear about human trafficking, they want to get involved. And they want to get involved in recovery work, right? They want to go into the trenches. They want to help survivors. They want to help them come out and things like that. And that is great, right? But not everyone is cut out for that work. Right? And if everyone is rushing into the immediate needs of survivors, very few people are thinking of the long-term needs of survivors.
Gotcha.
Right? And some of those long-term needs are education and employment to prevent re-trafficking. So Sungate basically exists to provide educational opportunities to survivors of human trafficking. And I will encourage all your listeners to go to Sungate and make a donation because your donation is tangible. It's something that you can see. If you have the ability to give $500 and say, I want this $500 to sponsor textbooks for a survivor of human trafficking, I can send you an itemized receipt of how every single dollar was spent. Wow. And I do that to all my donors. When I speak and I have donors who give me $50 a month. Wow. Because if you give $50 a month, by the end of the year, that is $600.
Yes.
And that could cover textbooks for survivors.
Wow.
Right? And so I will send that donor an itemized receipt. This is how your money have helped this individual. Right? And education, and like a lot of people are not thinking about that. When I'm a part of the National Survivor Network, and I can tell you how many survivors are trying to go back to school because it helps to prevent re-trafficking. Yes. Trafficking exists because of lack of opportunities such as employment, education. And if we can provide an opportunity where survivors can gain education, they can go to school and be contributing members of society. Wow. And so far, we have issued over 34 different scholarships. Wow. And when you talk about survivors who are enrolled in college and various programs, Gico, of those 34 scholarships that I have issued, they must show me a transcript. And all of them have a GPA of 3.0 and higher. Nice. Right? Our PhD candidate, she's in a PhD program, doing research, working in the community, and was still able to maintain a 4.0. Wow.
Amazing.
You know, so
Amazing.
we see that there's a need for it. I remember when we first started, we had to send out emails to programs to say, hey, apply for scholarships. Now I don't. Because the word is out there where people are just emailing me every single day
Right.
about scholars. I want to go back to school. I want to go back to school. I want to go back to school. And, you know, Sungate really thrives on the saying that says, give a man a fish, you feed him for the day.
Yes.
But if you teach him how to fish, he eats for a lifetime.
For a lifetime.
And what I see that's happening with some of our direct services organizations, they are out there and they are basically teaching a survivor how to be dependent on their program.
Yes. That happens
And
a
at
lot.
Sungate, we're teaching you how to be dependent on yourself. Go
Right.
out there, get that education, go after your dreams. You're able, now you have that degree, you're able to obtain a better paying job.
Right. Right.
So you can grow into self-sufficiency.
The key word is grow.
Yes.
The key word is grow. I mean, I asked about those organizations, including yours, because I want the world to know. I want the world to know that the battle is being fought, and yourself and others are championing a cause right now that is so great. And for that, on behalf of all the affected and all those listening and all those being educated right now, I personally want to say thank you.
Thank you, G. Cole.
No problem. My pleasure. My pleasure. And as we wrap up, the floor is yours. What words do you want to share to help to inspire or educate or motivate somebody that needs to hear just a couple words right now to drive them or nudge them in the right direction?
Well, what I want to say is, first of all, if we have any survivors who are listening, and G. Cole, like I said, I travel around the world and I share my story, and we have people who are suffering in silence.
Wow.
When I shared with the Gleaner, if you go on the Gleaner page and just on the Gleaner's Facebook page, there were so many derogatory comments because, of course, the Gleaner didn't have time to really share my story the way, you know, write the story. And so there were questions that people had, and they were saying, well, if you're on how can you be in school in the U.S. and not be on financial aid and green card? And
Everybody knows.
I've been a citizen since I was younger. So people had all these derogatory comments. And my friends would send me messages, oh, this person said that, and I'm about to say that. And I would have to encourage my friends not to say anything.
Right.
Don't respond to negativity because of all those negative comments, G. Cole, I was getting inbox with a load of stories
Right.
and emails, and people wanted to hear this, and people wanted to make this connection. And I'm telling you, G. Cole, there are women out there who are suffering in silence.
Wow, I can imagine.
They are living in this invisible prison because they have had similar experiences and they don't know how to get it out.
Wow.
I had a young lady that I met the other day after speaking at a play, and she's at George Washington University, which that's a very difficult school to get into. Right?
Yep.
And she's doing her PhD there, and she just came to me in tears. She couldn't even get her words out.
Wow.
And she was like, this is my story. What do I do? So there are people, so if you're a survivor and you're listening, I want you to know that there's help. Wow. And not only is there help, but there is hope. There is hope for you.
I love it.
You are destined for greatness, and you can get through this. But you have to believe, number one, you have to believe that you can get through this. Because you can get all the support that you need. If you are not willing to take the necessary steps to overcome, you're still going to suffer in pain.
Powerful.
Right? So that's to my survivors. To all your other listeners who may not be victims or survivors of human trafficking, I want you all to know that you have a role to play in the fight against human trafficking. We all have a role to play. This is not a political issue. This is not a law enforcement issue. This is not the church's issue. This is our problem.
Yes.
Human trafficking is happening in our communities, and we have to be the eyes and ears if we see something to say something.
Yes.
And people may be wondering, well, how do I say something? And I would definitely say there's a National Human Trafficking Hotline number, and that number is 888-3737-888. That number again is 888-3737-888. All you have to remember are 3 8s and 3737 in the middle.
Okay.
I know it doesn't sound like, a number, but it works
real.
out to be the number.
I'm going to put it in the show
So
notes.
that number again is 888-3737-888. If you see something, say something. Make a report, because it's better to make a report and be wrong about your report than to see something and not say something and a life is impacted.
Wow. And that number is for which hotline?
The National Human Trafficking Hotline number. And if you don't want to call, you can also text Be Free. And I don't know the digits for Be Free. You can also text for those digits, for text Be Free with your information. And you can make anonymous tips as well, but really get involved. And my third charge to people is, of course, what I always close with is, what is your issue? What is that one thing that you are passionate about? What is it? And what are you doing about it? Is it just a conversation at the dinner table?
Right.
Or are you really getting involved with fighting that issue? Is your issue homelessness? Well, what are you doing about that?
Right.
Are you writing to your legislators and saying, hey, what are you doing about this? Are you meeting with your legislators? Are you volunteering with organizations who are working on this issue? Are you doing research for this issue? Because young people can get involved too. When I speak to college students, I say you guys are in the best position to put a dent in human trafficking. You guys could do research that can inform the movement.
Yeah.
Right? We have people who may be listening with various talents and gifts that they can give back. We need attorneys.
Yes. I like it.
Right?
I like it.
We need attorneys to get involved. We need people who are good at writing policy.
Right.
Right? And you yourself, G. Cole, is giving back just by giving me this platform to share my testimony and the truth shed some light here on trafficking. So, you already have answered your call, right? But there are many of us who are in there, use your sources of influence.
Yes.
Right?
Use your resources, whatever they are.
Right? You may have connection to, like, people tell me all the time, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, do you know someone who can afford to do it?
Right.
Sit down and talk to that person and, ask that person to make a donation to an organization that's fighting trafficking.
Right.
Because, even with the in-kind donations and, donating your gifts and services, what keeps my doors open is funding, is money.
And we definitely need we need to generate the support because I'm a firm believer, and I hate it when people say I can't afford this or I can't afford that. Yes, you can afford. I'm sure if I sit down and look at all the nonsense that we spend money on, when somebody says I can't afford it, it means it's not important to me. I'm not trying to say sometimes people generally can't afford something, but for the most part, you're not specifying how much somebody can give or contribute. A contribution is a contribution. When somebody says I don't have the time, it's not important enough. When somebody says I can't afford it, they just don't want to do it sometimes. But I'm so glad that you're putting the word out there. And I mean, on behalf of the Homegrown family here and myself, I personally want to thank you so much for just joining us today and being generous with your time. I know we've been here for a little while and your knowledge and so forth. And I know there's so many questions the masses may have. If they need to reach out to you or your organization for help or to help, how can they get a hold of you? And I'm going to also make sure I put that information in the show notes. I'm going to put the National Human Trafficking Hotline number. I'm going to put the text number out there too. But how do they get a hold of you?
So they can get a hold of me through my website, sun-gate.org, or if they want to email me directly, my email is shamir.mckenzie@gmail.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and again put all that information in the show notes. We're going to be putting this episode up earlier than we normally do, and definitely get the word out because it's something that I do think is necessary. I also commend you so much because I follow you on Facebook and social media, and I see you so busy. We've been trying to do this, and I sit down and I'm like, when it happens, but I'm just so proud because, whenever I don't get you, I normally see why. You're in the airport in Aruba. Yes. You're in the airport here. And I'm like, I'll message you sometimes, send a Facebook message or a text. I'm like, girl, you on another flight somewhere? But you know what? I am so encouraged and so moved by the work that you're doing. So again, thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me, G. Cole, and keep doing what you do in getting the word out about all these concerns and issues that we have in society, because some of us perish through the lack of knowledge.
Right. So true. So true. And again, it has been a pleasure. It definitely has. And there's so many other topics out there that I'm sure I'll reach back out to you at a later time to get you to hop back on the line with us with. But for now, I just thank you so much. Keep it moving. Keep it grooving. It is Homegrown.
They want to divide and rule. Bye. It's a generation we can't fool. Bye. Uprising, we on the horizon. Say they want to take it over. I want them. Say we got to run for cover. Freedom fighters, we keep surviving. Let them know we're not push over. It's not over till it's over. Tell me what this world is coming to. I really got to know where we are running to. Yeah, say we try to find a place, but we're running out of space, Lord. What we are supposed to do? Somebody tell me please where we running from. Is it the fighting or illusion by the hands of man? Yeah, time to find a common ground. Can't afford to run around. Why can't we get along? Uprising, we on the horizon. Up there. Say they want to take it over, but they will never. Say we got to run for cover. Freedom fighters, we keep surviving. Let them know we're not push over. Never. It's not over till it's over. To see unification is my greatest desire. But my none envy get cast in the fire. Boy, what the dragon and the beer, the illusion and the fear get burned with the thief and the liar. Let's get together the words of the Messiah. No single out, make we do this in a choir. No man is an island, no man stands alone. Show love and let your love inspire. Come on. Uprising, we on the horizon. Say they want to take it over. Say we got to run for cover. Freedom fighters, we keep surviving. Let them know we're not push over. It's not over till it's over. We got to find a way. We live to see that day where there is no more oppression and no more depression, no way. So listen what I say. From your works you shall get paid. Oh gosh. With no more aggression, make love your possession. Uprising, we on the horizon.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. It has indeed been a pleasure. Be sure to subscribe and to share this podcast. Homegrown with G. Cole is now available on Stitcher. It's on TuneIn. It's on Spotify and now on iHeartRadio. Remember, be safe, be kind, and be good to each other. My name is G. Cole, and this is Homegrown.
Nakikinika sa música, Homegrown with G. Cole.
Estás escuchando Homegrown con G. Cole.
您现在正在收听的是 Homegrown with G. Cole.
You're listening to Homegrown with G. Cole.
Remember, all the music played here on the Homegrown podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your digital retailers. Please support the artists.